everyone, and welcome back to the Wisdom by Harry YouTube channel. My name is Harry.
And I'm Mary. We're so excited to have you here today for another fascinating episode.
You know, I love learning about languages, and today we're going on a word adventure.
Oh, cool.
Yeah, we're going to look at some English words that sound exactly the same but have totally different meanings.
Ooh, fun.
It's like a secret code.
Like a secret code.
Exactly. And you've given me some really fun examples to explore today.
Okay.
Are you ready to unlock some word mysteries?
Absolutely. Let's see what we've got.
Okay. The first tricky pair is flour and flour. They sound exactly the same.
Yeah.
But one is what we use to bake cakes and cookies.
Right.
And the other one is the beautiful plant with petals and stems.
Yeah.
Can you imagine putting a flower in your cake batter?
That would be a pretty strange cake.
Yeah.
But that's why it's so important to pay attention to the other words in a sentence. Yeah, they give us clues about which meaning is the right one.
Like a detective.
Exactly. Like if someone says, I need to buy some flour to make a cake, you know, they're not talking about planting a flower in the ground.
Right. It's like being a detective and looking for clues.
You got it.
Okay, let's try another one.
Sure.
How about new and new?
Ooh.
These words are tricky because they sound exactly alike, but they have different jobs in a sentence.
Yeah. New describes something that's fresh or recent,
Right?
like a brand new toy.
Okay.
But new tells us that someone had information or understanding about something in the past.
Yeah.
Like, I knew the answer to the question.
So new is for things, and new is for what's in our brains.
Yeah, that's a helpful way to remember it.
That's a good one. Okay, ready for another challenge?
Yeah, bring it on.
What about air and air?
Ah, yes. This pair can be a bit tricky.
These always trip me up
Yeah.
because air is all around us. It's what we breathe.
Right.
But an heir is someone who inherits something valuable.
Yeah, like a castle or a crown when a family member passes away.
Oh, wow.
And it's pronounced the same as air, not like hair on your head.
Wow, that is tricky. I have to practice that one. Okay, let's try one last set before we take a little break.
Okay.
These are the famous triplets. There, and there. They all sound the same,
Oh, yeah.
but they're all spelled differently and they all mean different things.
It's like they're trying to confuse us.
Yeah.
But don't worry, we can crack this code.
Yep.
There tells us about a location, a place. It points to something like, look over there.
Okay.
Then we have there, which shows that something belongs to someone. It's possessive, like that's their dog.
Okay.
And finally, there is a shortcut for they are. It's two words squeezed into one. Like they're going to the park.
Okay, I think I'm starting to get the hang of this. So if I see there, I should think about ownership, like whose toy it is.
Uh-huh.
If I see there, I should try to replace it with they are to see if it makes sense.
Exactly.
And if I see there, I should think about a place like where something is.
You got it. You're becoming a word detective.
I like it.
It's awesome.
This is fun.
Yeah, it is. It is. And you know, it's amazing how many of these sound alike words English has. It's like a giant puzzle.
It is a giant puzzle. But why are there so many words that sound the same, but mean different things? It seems like it would make things so confusing.
Well, you see, English is a bit like a magpie.
Okay.
It loves to collect shiny new words from other languages.
Yeah.
Over hundreds of years, English has borrowed words from French, Latin, Greek, and so many others.
So it's like a big mix of different languages all rolled into one.
Exactly. And sometimes when these borrowed words came into English, they ended up sounding like words that were already here, even though they had different meanings.
Ah, that makes sense. It's like if you had two friends named Sarah, but one Sarah always wore a red hat and the other Sarah always wore a blue hat, you could tell them apart even though they had the same name.
That's a great analogy. And just like with your friends named Sarah, we use context clues to tell our sound-alike words apart. Now let's try another tricky pair.
Okay.
Right and right. They sound the same, but they have very different meanings.
Ooh, I know this one. Right is what we do with a pen and paper, and right means something is correct or the opposite of left.
That's exactly right. You're getting the hang of this. Do you want to try another one?
Yeah.
How about see and see?
Okay, see is what we do with our eyes, and sea is a big body of salt water. Wait, are those borrowed words?
Good question. See comes from Old English, so it's been around for a very long time. But see actually comes from a very old word that meant lake or marsh.
Wow. So even words that have been in English for a long time can have surprising origins. Okay, I'm ready for another challenge. What about meet and meet?
Okay, meet is when we come together with someone like for a party or a class, but meat is what we eat like chicken or beef.
Okay, so one is an action and one is a thing. That makes sense.
You're really good at this. Now, this next one is a bit of a tongue twister.
Okay.
It's peace and peace. They sound almost exactly alike, but one tiny sound makes all the difference.
Okay, peace is when everything is calm and quiet, like no fighting or arguments.
Yeah.
And peace is a part of something like a piece of cake.
Yes. You got them both. You're becoming a master word detective. Now, let's try something a little different. This one is here and here. They sound very similar, but they have different spellings and different meanings.
Okay, here is what we do with our ears, and here means this place, like, come over here.
Exactly. And notice how one ends with R and the other ends with air. That's a little clue that can help you remember which is which.
Oh, that's a good tip. So even the spelling can give us hints about the meaning. This is so much fun. I'm starting to see these tricky words everywhere.
That's because you're paying attention.
Yeah.
And the more you pay attention, the easier it will be to understand what you read and hear. And who knows, you might even start to impress your friends with your amazing word knowledge.
I would love that. But, sometimes I worry that I'll never be able to remember all these different words and meanings. It seems like there are so many.
Don't worry, listening language takes time and practice. It's like learning to ride a bike. At first, it might feel wobbly and scary, but the more you practice, the easier it becomes. And before you know it, you'll be zooming around with confidence.
That's a great way to think about it. So instead of getting frustrated when I make a mistake, I should just keep practicing and learning from my mistakes.
Exactly. Everyone makes mistakes, even native English speakers. The important thing is to keep trying and to have fun with it. The more you enjoy learning about language, the more you'll remember.
That makes me feel a lot better. So what are some fun ways I can practice these tricky words?
Well, you can play word games, read books and articles, listen to podcasts, and even watch movies and TV shows. The key is to expose yourself to language as much as possible and to pay attention to the words you encounter. You can even keep a notebook where you write down new words and their meanings. And don't be afraid to ask questions if you're unsure about something.
Those are great ideas. I'm going to start a word journal today. We've talked a lot about how to tell these sound-alike words apart. But are there any tricks for remembering how to spell them?
That's a great question. English spelling can be tricky, but there are some patterns you can learn to make it easier. For example, sometimes the way a word is pronounced can give you a clue about how it's spelled. Like with peace and peace. Remember how peace is spelled with an E and peace is spelled with an IE?
Yeah, I remember. So it's not just about memorizing every word, it's about finding patterns and clues that can help us figure things out. It's like a code.
Exactly. And the more you learn about these patterns and clues, the easier it will be to crack the code of English spelling.
This is so fascinating. I'm starting to feel like a real word detective.
That's the spirit. And remember, the best way to learn is to keep exploring, keep experimenting, and keep having fun with language.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
This makes me wonder about something else. We've talked about how English has borrowed words from other languages, but has English ever given any words back?
That's a fantastic question. And the answer is yes. English words have traveled all over the world and have been adopted into many other languages. Think about words like computer, internet, and smartphone. These words have become so common that they're used in many different languages, often with slight variations in pronunciation or spelling.
Wow, that's amazing. So English is not just borrowing words, it's also sharing them with the world.
It's a beautiful exchange of ideas and culture. Language is constantly evolving and adapting, and it's fascinating to see how it connects us all.
This has been such an eye-opening journey. I feel like I've learned so much about how language works and how it connects us to the past, present, and future.
Me too. And we've only just scratched the surface. There's so much more to discover about the fascinating world of words.
Yeah, I feel like I've really leveled up my word power today. I'm going to be listening for all those tricky words everywhere I go now.
I bet. You'll be amazed how much more you notice now that you're aware of them. It's like a secret code has been unlocked.
Exactly. And it makes me wonder, what other secrets are hidden in language? There's just so much to learn.
I know, right? That's the beauty of it. Language is like a never-ending adventure. Every word has a story to tell, a history, a connection to other words and ideas.
It's funny. We started by talking about words that sound alike but mean different things.
Right.
But as we've been talking, I've realized that even words that sound and are spelled the same can have different meanings.
Yeah.
Depending on how they're used.
Absolutely. Context is everything. It's just like a chameleon changes its color to blend in with its surroundings.
Oh, yeah.
Words can change their meaning depending on the other words around them.
So it's not just about knowing what words mean by themselves. It's about understanding how they work together in a sentence.
Yeah.
It's like a puzzle where each word is a piece that fits together to create a bigger picture.
Exactly. And the more pieces you have, the clearer the picture becomes. It's like learning a new language opens up a whole new world of understanding and possibilities.
It's true. It's like suddenly being able to see things that were always there but were hidden before he gave her. I'm feeling so inspired to keep learning and exploring the world of words.
That's great.
We're going to be looking at, something that I think everyone's heard about but might not fully grasp, like what it actually means.
Right.
And that is your impact on the environment.
Yeah.
And you've given us some really cool material to dig into on this.
Absolutely.
And I'm excited to kind of get into it with you.
Yeah, this is going to be fun.
Yeah. So it looks like the material comes from some kind of a YouTube channel.
It does. Yeah, it's called English Podcast Zone.
Okay.
And the hosts, they really go into this whole thing about like what exactly is a carbon footprint.
Okay.
And they even, give some tips and tricks on how to reduce it.
Cool. So let's just jump right into that then.
Okay.
When we talk about carbon footprint, I mean, it's not actual footprint, right?
No, it's not. You're not going to see like a sooty carbon footprint on the ground.
Right. So what does it actually mean?
Well, think of it this way. Like when you walk on the beach, right?
Uh-huh.
You leave those footprints in the sand.
Yeah.
Your carbon footprint's kind of like that. Oh, okay.
But instead of leaving marks in the sand, we're leaving, a trace on the environment with all the carbon dioxide and other greenhouse gases that we generate.
So like every time I drive my car
Exactly.
or use electricity,
Uh-huh.
even just breathe,
Yeah, you've been
contributing to this footprint.
That's right.
Yeah.
It all adds up,
Yeah.
And it's interesting because the material you sent me, it actually brings up a really important debate about how severe our impact is, specifically when it comes to this whole global warming thing.
Yeah. And it's really interesting because some people are like super concerned about global warming and other people are just like, that's mumbo jumbo.
Yeah, yeah.
So like, why is there such a difference in how people see this issue?
I think it's a really complex issue.
Mm-hmm.
And the material does a good job of showing like how many different sides there are to it.
Okay.
I mean, some folks see global warming as this like urgent crisis that we created,
Yeah.
while others believe it's just part of like a natural cycle, or that it's way overblown.
And that mumbo jumbo comment you mentioned,
Yeah.
that really highlights, I think, distrust that some people have about the science behind climate change.
Yeah, no, that makes sense.
So, we have all these different perspectives.
Yeah.
What really stuck out to you, like, in those different views?
I think it was interesting how the material, regardless of where you stand on that whole, global warming debate,
Right.
they really stress taking action.
Okay.
It's like they're saying, even if you don't buy into all the science, there are still good reasons to try and live more sustainably.
I see what you mean.
Yeah.
And that actually ties in perfectly with their whole discussion about going green and being energy efficient,
Right.
which seems to be something that everyone can at least agree on in the material.
Yeah.
What are your thoughts on all that? Like, is it all just buzzwords or are they giving us real solutions?
I think it could be both, honestly.
Okay.
It's really easy to throw around words like eco-friendly without really understanding what it means.
Yeah.
But I think the material does a good job of giving some solid examples, like, hybrid vehicles and solar panels.
Right.
What do you think about those? Are they realistic for most people?
That's a great question. And one of the people in the video even mentions, they live kind of out in boonies,
Right.
and it definitely makes a difference.
Right, yeah.
But they still emphasize that even small changes can have a big impact,
Okay.
like using reusable bags or carpooling, things like that.
So location really does play a role in all of this.
Absolutely. And the material really dives into that.
Oh,
like
yeah.
in cities, you often have more options for public transportation.
Yeah, makes it easier to ditch the car,
Yeah, right, exactly. But out in the country, like the person in the video was saying, it can be harder.
Yeah.
They might not have
Yeah.
the infrastructure for things like, installing solar panels or charging electric cars easily.
All right.
But they also have a different kind of opportunity.
Yeah.
A closer connection to nature,
Yeah.
more potential for things like gardening and composting at home.
So it's like finding a balance, I guess.
Exactly.
Working with the environment you have.
Yeah, you got it.
Yeah.
And it all comes back to that idea of individual action,
Mm-hmm.
making those conscious choices within your own little world, because those choices, they really can ripple outward.
So what really resonated with you from all of those suggestions? Like what really stuck out?
I think for me, it was that whole thing about water conservation.
Oh, yeah.
They even said that water scarcity could become a bigger problem than running out of oil in the future,
Wow.
which is a pretty scary thought, you know?
Yeah, that's intense.
And they only briefly touch on solutions like using rain barrels, but it really makes you think about what we're doing to protect that resource.
Yeah, for sure. And, they also talk about composting, which I've always been curious about.
Yeah, composting is great.
It seems pretty simple.
Right.
Like in theory.
Yeah.
But how does it actually work?
It's kind of like nature's recycling system. You create this perfect environment for tiny little microorganisms to break down all that organic matter, like your food scraps and yard waste.
Oh, okay.
And here's the cool part.
Yeah.
The process actually makes methane gas,
Why?
which you can then use as fuel.
So you're not just like getting rid of waste.
Right.
You're making something useful.
Exactly. And I think that's what they were trying to get across,
Yeah.
That interconnectedness of everything. Like what we see as trash could be a valuable resource with a little creativity.
Yeah.
It shows how our choices, even something as simple as composting, can be part of a bigger solution.
Right.
So what are your thoughts on that?
I think it's really cool. I mean, it makes you feel like you can actually have an impact,
Yeah,
even with small things.
absolutely. And that leads perfectly into their point about the power of collective action. Like if everyone makes those small changes, it can really add up.
Yeah. No, that's true. So we've talked about what a carbon footprint is.
Yeah.
And we've gotten into some of the things that we can do to reduce it.
Mm-hmm.
But how do we go from, each of us doing our own thing
Right.
to actually working together to make a bigger change?
Now that's the real question, isn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a really tough one. I mean, the material mentions some interesting ideas like getting the community involved
Okay.
and focusing on education. Did any of that stand out to you?
Yeah, actually, they talked about community composting programs.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was pretty cool.
Oh, absolutely. Things like that can be so effective.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not just about the composting itself, right?
Right.
It's about bringing people together.
Yeah.
Giving them a shared goal.
It makes you feel like you're part of something bigger.
Exactly. And when people feel connected to a community that supports these choices, they're way more likely to stick with them.
Yeah, that makes sense. It's like that whole ripple effect thing.
Totally. Like one person starts composting,
Yeah.
their neighbor sees it and gets inspired.
And then the whole block is composting.
That's the idea. And the material also really emphasizes the importance of education.
Yeah.
Like, the more we understand the reasons behind these sustainable practices, the more likely we are to actually do them,
Right. It's not about shaming people.
Exactly.
It's about giving them the tools and the knowledge.
Right. And that can look like a lot of different things, right?
Yeah.
Workshops, online resources, community events. It's really just anything that helps people connect their own actions to the bigger picture.
Right. So it's about creating a culture where sustainability just becomes second nature.
I couldn't have said it better myself. It's a shift in values and priorities.
Yeah, and it kind of makes me think about that whole thing about consumerism.
Oh, yeah, for sure. I mean, the material talks about the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, recycle, which is like the foundation of sustainable living, right?
Right.
But do you think that's really enough?
I don't know.
Yeah.
It's a good start.
Right.
But are the 3 R's really enough to deal with all the environmental stuff we're facing today?
That's the question, isn't it? I mean, it's a great framework for minimizing our impact. But shouldn't we be thinking bigger?
Okay, what do you mean?
Like, what about creating a positive impact?
Oh, okay.
Not just reducing the bad stuff, but actually restoring and regenerating what we've messed up.
So going beyond just like shrinking our footprint.
Yeah. It's about healing the planet.
Wow, okay.
It's about shifting from that take, make, dispose mindset
Right.
to a more circular economy
Okay.
where resources are valued and reused and there's almost no waste.
So it's not just about recycling.
Uh-huh.
It's about consuming less in general.
Exactly. Being mindful about what we buy and how we use it.
Right. And it makes me think about the role that businesses and governments play in all of this.
Yeah, totally. The material mentions that a bit,
Yeah.
And I think there's a growing awareness that we need systemic change
Okay.
alongside individual action.
So what does that look like?
Well, we're already seeing a shift in what consumers want
Okay.
and how companies operate.
Okay.
People are looking for eco-friendly options, and businesses are responding by adopting more sustainable practices.
So it's like this positive feedback loop
Exactly.
where consumer demand pushes businesses to be better.
That's it. And of course, governments have a big role to play too, right?
Right.
Creating policies that support sustainable practices and investing in renewable energy.
So it's like this multi-level approach.
It is. It's about getting everyone on board, from individuals to businesses to governments.
All working towards the same goal.
That's the key. a truly sustainable future.
Yeah.
You know, it's easy to focus on the negative when we talk about all this stuff,
Yeah.
but I think it's important to remember the positives too.
Oh, yeah, for sure.
The material mentions cleaner air and water.
Uh-huh.
What other good things do you think will come out of this?
Well, I know they mentioned that sustainability can actually go hand in hand with economic growth.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, how does that work?
Well, investing in renewable energy creates jobs.
Yeah.
And it makes us less reliant on fossil fuels, which are, kind of unpredictable.
Right.
And as we get better at using resources efficiently,
Uh-huh.
we'll save money across the board.
So it's not a trade-off.
Nope.
It's about doing what's good for the planet and for our wallets.
Exactly. It's about improving our quality of life, not lowering it.
I love that. So it's not just about being green.
Right.
It's about creating a world that's more just and equitable.
Absolutely. And it all comes back to that interconnectedness we talked about.
Right.
Our environment, our society, our economy, it's all connected.
It's about making sure everyone can thrive, not just a select few.
That's it. And the material really drives that point home.
Uh-huh.
They remind us that even our smallest actions can have a ripple effect.
Yeah, and that's what I find so inspiring about all of this.
Yeah.
It's easy to feel overwhelmed by the scale of the problem,
Right.
but we're not powerless.
Exactly.
We all have a role to play,
Yeah.
and every little bit helps.
It's about taking ownership and recognizing the power we have to make a difference. What's a really inspiring example of that for you?
Well, they mentioned Earth Hour,
Yeah.
where everyone turns off their lights for an hour.
Oh, yeah. That's a great one.
It's such a simple thing,
Right?
but it sends a powerful message.
It does. It reminds us that we're not alone in this.
Yeah,
There's a whole global movement of people who care about this planet.
and when we work together, we can really make a difference.
Exactly. It's about understanding that we're all connected.
Yeah, and that our actions matter.
They do. And it all starts with awareness. The more we learn about these issues, the better equipped we are to make good choices.
Yeah. This has been a really eye-opening conversation.
Me too. It's amazing how much we can learn from just talking about this stuff.
But before we move on,
Yeah.
there's one thing that's been bugging me.
Okay.
The material focuses a lot on reducing our negative impact, but they only briefly mention one really innovative solution, and it's the biodegradable plastic made from corn oil.
Oh, yeah, I remember that.
And it made me think, what other possibilities are out there? What if instead of just trying to reduce our consumption, we could actually reinvent the materials themselves?
No, that's a brilliant point. I mean, that bioplastic is a perfect example
Yeah.
of how innovation can lead to more eco-friendly solutions.
It's not just about using less plastic.
Right.
It's about creating a different kind of plastic.
Yeah, that's the future right there.
Yep.
So where do we go from here? It really does open up a whole new way of thinking, you know?
Yeah, it's pretty cool.
Like, instead of just mitigating the harm,
Mhm.
we're actually looking at ways to regenerate.
So not just reducing our footprint,
Right.
but actually making things better.
Exactly. And I think we're seeing that in a lot of different areas.
Oh, yeah. Like what?
Well, renewable energy is a big one, obviously.
Okay, yeah.
Things like solar panels and wind turbines and even geothermal systems.
Right.
Those are all about creating energy in a way that doesn't hurt the planet.
Makes sense. What else?
Oh, there's regenerative agriculture.
Okay, I have heard of that, but
It's basically farming in a way that actually improves the soil
oh, cool.
and helps to capture carbon from the atmosphere.
So it's like a win-win.
Exactly. And even the fashion industry is getting in on the action.
Oh, wow, really?
Yeah, they're starting to use more sustainable materials
Yeah.
and moving towards a more circular model where clothes are reused and recycled.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
It really does feel like things are starting to change.
They are. It's really exciting to see. And I think that's what the material was getting at, you know?
Well,
It's not just about waiting for someone else to fix things.
Right.
It's about each of us taking responsibility and becoming part of the solution.
So what can people actually do? Like, what are some concrete steps?
Well, the material had some good suggestions, right?
Yeah, like reusable bags and saving water and all that.
Exactly. It's about those everyday choices that we make, recognizing that they can add up to something bigger.
But it's not just about those little things.
Right. It goes beyond that. I think it's about becoming more informed
Okay.
and more engaged as citizens.
So, like, what does that look like?
Well, it could mean staying up to date on environmental issues,
Yeah.
supporting businesses that are doing things the right way, and speaking up for policies that promote sustainability.
So using our voices and our wallets.
Exactly. Creating a demand for change.
Right. So it's about a multifaceted approach.
You got it. Personal choices,
Uh-huh.
supporting businesses,
Yeah.
and engaging in the political process.
All working together to create a more sustainable future.
That's the idea. We're all part of a system,
Right.
and our actions, both individually and collectively, can shape that system.
It's amazing to think about, you know?
It is.
Like, we're not just along for the ride.
Uh-huh.
We can actually steer things in the right direction.
And that's a really empowering feeling, I think.
It is. But, you know, it's also a journey.
Oh, absolutely.
There's no finish line when it comes to sustainability.
It's a constant process of learning and adapting and evolving.
It's not about being perfect.
Nope.
It's about
And-
trying to do better.
Exactly. Making more informed choices
Uh-huh.
and working towards a healthier planet.
And finding ways to enjoy that process.
Oh, for sure. Sustainability shouldn't feel like a burden.
Right.
It's about creating a world that's more vibrant and resilient and fulfilling for everyone.
That's a great way to look at it. So it's not just about protecting the planet.
Right.
It's about living in harmony with nature,
Yeah.
building strong communities,
Uh-huh.
and creating a future where everyone can thrive.
And that's a future worth fighting for, isn't it?
It is.
It's great to be back.
Today we're going on a deep dive into healthy eating.
Sounds fun.
So imagine you're at the grocery store.
Okay.
You're trying to decide what to put in your cart to be healthier.
Mm-hmm.
How do we know which foods are good for us
That's a great question.
and which ones we should maybe leave on the shelf?
Well, you often hear people talk about eating right, like it's this big mystery,
Right.
but it's actually pretty simple.
Okay, tell me more.
Well, it all comes down to choosing foods that give our bodies
Yeah.
good things to grow strong.
Okay.
It's kind of like choosing the right building blocks
Okay,
to make a really strong house.
I get it.
And on the other hand, you have junk food.
Yeah, what's that all about?
It's like eating candy all the time.
Oh,
It might taste good in the moment,
yeah.
but it doesn't really give your body
Yeah.
what it needs to be its best.
So it's like using flimsy materials
Right.
to build that house.
Yeah.
So what are some examples of junk food?
Oh, I think we all know those.
Yeah.
Things like pizza, potato chips, hot dogs.
Okay. Yeah, those are tempting,
They are.
but not the best for us.
Right. But when we choose to eat right,
Yeah.
we're picking foods like whole wheat bread, skimmed milk, fresh fish.
Those sound a lot healthier.
They are.
So what makes those foods so healthy?
Well, they're full of these things called nutrients.
Nutrients, what are those?
They're kind of like superheroes for our bodies.
Okay.
They're the good things in food
Yeah.
that our bodies need to work properly.
So it's like giving our bodies the right tools for the job.
Exactly. And different foods have different kinds of nutrients.
Interesting.
Like fresh fruits and vegetables,
Yeah.
they're packed with vitamins and minerals.
Oh, okay.
And whole grains, like brown rice and oatmeal.
Yeah.
They give us energy and fiber.
I've heard about fiber. What does that do?
Oh, it's like a superhero broom for our insides.
Really?
Yeah, it helps keep things moving smoothly.
That's important.
It is. And then we have dairy products,
Okay.
like milk and yogurt. They're full of calcium.
Strong bone.
Exactly. And proteins, those are the building blocks for our muscles and tissues.
Oh, okay.
We can get those from meat, fish,
Yeah.
eggs,
Mm-hmm.
nuts and beans too.
So there are a lot of healthy choices out there.
There are.
But what happens when we eat too much junk food?
Well, think about it.
Mhm.
If we don't give our bodies the right nutrients,
Yeah,
they can't function at their best.
right.
And that can lead to problems.
Like what kind of problems?
Oh, things like obesity, diabetes, even heart disease.
Those sound serious.
They are. It's like our bodies are trying to send us a message
Okay.
that something's not quite right.
So we need to listen to our bodies.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And give them the superhero fuel they need.
That makes sense. So we've talked about healthy and unhealthy foods.
Mhm.
What about organic food?
Oh, that's a popular one.
It is. What's so special about it?
Well, organic food is grown without using harmful chemicals
Oh.
or pesticides.
So it's like choosing food that comes straight from nature.
That's a great way to put it.
And why is that better?
Well, for one thing,
Yeah.
it's gentler on our bodies.
Okay.
We're not putting all those chemicals into our system.
Right.
And it's also better for the environment.
Really? How so?
Well, organic farming doesn't use those harmful pesticides
Okay.
that can pollute the soil and water
Mm-hmm.
and harm wildlife.
So it's a win-win.
Exactly. You're taking care of yourself
Yeah.
and the planet at the same time.
But isn't organic food more expensive?
It can be, yeah.
So how do people decide if it's worth it?
That's a good question.
Yeah.
It really comes down to personal choice
Okay.
and what's important to you.
Hmm.
Some people choose to buy organic whenever they can.
Okay.
Others focus on buying certain foods organic,
Okay, like which ones?
like fruits and vegetables that tend to have more pesticides.
That makes sense.
So it's about making informed choices
Right.
and finding what works best for you.
So we've talked about food choices. What about a healthy lifestyle?
Oh, that's a big one.
Is it just about the food we eat?
Not at all.
What else is there?
It's about making healthy choices in every part of our lives.
Okay, give me some examples.
Well, like getting enough sleep.
That's important.
It is. And exercising regularly.
Yeah, it keeps our bodies moving.
Right. And even managing stress.
Oh, stress is a big one these days.
It is.
So how do we manage that?
There are lots of ways,
Yeah.
like taking deep breaths,
Oh, yeah.
spending time in nature.
Sounds relaxing.
It is. Or talking to someone you trust.
When things get tough.
Exactly.
So it's like all these healthy choices,
Right.
they all add up
They do.
to create a healthier and happier life.
That's the goal. It's kind of like we're building a superhero team, you know?
Oh, a superhero team. I like that.
Each food group has its own special powers
Okay, tell me more.
to help keep our bodies running strong.
So what are these superhero food groups?
Well, first up, we have the fruits and veggies team.
Okay, the classics.
They're like the defenders of our bodies.
Oh, how so?
They're packed with vitamins and minerals,
Right.
which help us fight off sickness and stay strong.
So they keep those nasty germs away.
Exactly. And they come in so many different colors,
That is true.
each with their own unique powers.
Wow. Okay, give me an example.
Like red fruits and veggies.
Okay, like what?
Strawberries, tomatoes, they have something called lycopene.
Lycopene, that's a mouthful.
It is, but it's really good for our hearts.
So eating a rainbow of fruits and veggies
Yeah.
is like giving our bodies a whole army of superheroes.
Exactly.
Okay, who's next on our superhero team?
Next up are the mighty grains.
The grains, okay.
Think brown rice, oatmeal, whole wheat bread.
Okay, yeah.
They're like the energy provider.
The energy providers, what do they do?
They give our bodies the fuel we need
Okay,
to run, jump, play all day long.
so they're like the power source for our adventures.
Exactly.
But what makes whole grains so special?
That's a good question. Whole grains have all three parts of the grain kernel.
The kernel, okay.
It's like getting the whole package of superhero fuel,
Right.
refined grains like white bread.
Yeah.
They're missing some of those parts.
Oh, I see.
So they don't give us as much energy
Good
or
days.
keep us feeling full for as long.
So it's like choosing a whole grain superhero over one who's lost their cake.
Exactly.
Okay, I'm getting hungry just thinking about all this superhero fuel.
Me too.
So what about the protein team?
Oh, the protein team is super important.
We talked about them earlier.
We did.
They're the ones for building strong muscles.
You got it. They're like the building material for our bodies,
Okay.
helping us grow and repair our muscles,
Hmm.
skin, even our hair and nails.
Wow, they do a lot.
They do. And guess what?
Right.
Protein also helps us feel full
Oh, really?
and satisfied after we eat.
So we're not snacking all the time.
Exactly. So we're less likely to reach for those unhealthy snacks.
So protein is like the bricklayer of our superhero team,
That's a great way to think about it.
building us up, keeping those hunger pangs away.
Exactly.
Okay, what's next?
Oh, we can't forget about the dairy team.
The dairy team. Oh,
The calcium
The
crusaders.
calcium crusaders, I love it.
They're super important for strong bones and teeth.
Just like a superhero needs a strong suit of armor,
Exactly. Think milk, yogurt, cheese.
the classics.
They're all part of the dairy team.
But what about people who can't have dairy?
That's a great point. Some people have trouble digesting dairy,
Yeah, I've heard that.
but no worries.
Oh,
There are other ways to get calcium.
like what?
Leafy green vegetables,
Okay,
like spinach and kale.
yeah.
Some beans and nuts have calcium too.
So it's like having backup superheroes.
Exactly.
Okay, so we've got our defenders, our energy providers, our building materials, and our armor.
It's a pretty incredible team.
It is. What else should we know about these superhero food groups?
It's important to make healthy eating a habit.
Okay, how do we do that?
That means trying to eat a variety of foods.
From each group.
Exactly, every single day.
So it's like having a well-balanced team,
Exactly.
with each member contributing their unique strengths.
You got it.
Okay, so we've talked about choosing our superhero foods
Right.
and making healthy meals and snacks.
Yeah.
But I know there's more to being a superhero
You're right.
than just eating right.
Absolutely.
Just like superheroes need to train their bodies and minds.
Yes.
We need to make sure we're taking care of ourselves in other ways too.
It's all connected.
Okay, so what else can we do to level up our superhero skills?
One of the most important things is
Yeah.
getting enough sleep.
Sleep.
Okay, think of it like recharging your superpowers overnight.
Recharging, I like that.
When we sleep, our bodies and minds get to rest
Okay.
and repair themselves.
But we could wake up feeling awesome.
Exactly. Ready for action.
So if I don't get enough sleep,
I
it's like my superpowers are running on low battery. That's a good way to put it.
might feel tired and sluggish.
Yeah,
And it's harder to focus
absolutely.
and make good decisions.
It affects everything.
So how much sleep do we need to keep our superpowers charged?
Most kids need around 9 to 11 hours of sleep each night.
Wow, that seems like a lot.
It might sound like a lot,
Yeah.
but it's really important for growing and developing.
Okay, I guess it's worth it.
It is.
If it means I can be a super strong and healthy superhero.
Exactly.
What else can we do to train our bodies?
Well, just like superheroes need to practice their moves,
Yeah.
we need to exercise regularly
Okay.
to keep our bodies strong and healthy.
So how much exercise are we talking?
Aim for at least 60 minutes of physical activity every day.
Ooh, that sounds fun. What kind of exercise?
Anything that gets your heart pumping
Okay.
and your body moving.
Like what?
You could play outside, go for a bike ride, dance, swim,
I like those.
even just run around with your friends.
Yeah.
So it's all about having fun and getting active.
Exactly.
What if I don't like sports or running around?
That's okay. There are lots of other ways to get exercise.
Oh, like what?
You could try yoga,
Yoga. Okay.
martial arts,
Ooh,
or even just taking a walk in the park.
that sounds nice.
It is. The important thing is to find something you enjoy
Yeah.
and make it a regular part of your routine.
So it's like choosing a superhero training program that fits our personality and interests.
Exactly.
Okay, I like that. Now, what about our minds?
Our minds.
How do we train those to be superhero strong?
That's a great question. Just like superheroes need to stay calm and focused under pressure,
Yeah.
we need to learn how to manage stress
Okay.
and stay mentally healthy.
But how do we do that?
Stress can feel like a supervillain sometimes,
It really can.
but there are things we can do to fight back.
Like what?
One helpful trick is to practice mindfulness.
Mindfulness. What's that?
It means paying attention to the present moment, noticing our thoughts and feelings.
Without judgment.
Exactly. You could try taking some deep breaths,
Deep breaths. Okay.
meditating,
Mm-hmm.
or even just spending time in nature.
That sounds really peaceful
It is. Those activities can help us feel more relaxed.
and centered.
Exactly.
Any other tips for fighting off those stress supervillains?
Another important thing is to talk to someone we trust.
Okay.
If we're feeling overwhelmed,
Yeah.
it could be a parent, teacher, friend, even a therapist.
So it's like having a superhero sidekick
It is. Sharing our feelings can help us feel less alone.
and more capable of handling things.
Exactly.
This is all so helpful. I feel like I'm learning so much
Me too.
about how to be a true superhero.
Remember, being a superhero isn't just about special powers.
Right.
It's about making healthy choices.
Taking care of our bodies and minds.
You got it.
So what kind of gems did Marco and Catherine have to offer?
Well, they used a bunch of interesting phrases that you might not find in a textbook.
Well,
For example, to describe bad moods, they talked about feeling down and grouchy.
grouchy.
Grouchy,
That's a great one.
right?
It's so much more descriptive than just saying like sad or upset.
Uh-huh.
You instantly get that image of someone who's grumpy and irritable.
Right. It's like a more vivid way to paint a picture of your mood.
I love that.
And you know what helps me remember it?
What?
Thinking of Oscar the Grouch from Sesame Street.
Oh yeah.
Always grumpy, always complaining.
Always grouchy.
He is.
Perfect. I will forget that one now.
Good.
So besides grouchy, what other phrases did they use for negative emotions?
Well, they also talked about feeling stressed out and on edge.
Okay.
And what's interesting is that they even discussed how to describe situations that cause those feelings.
Okay.
Like they use the word nerve-wracking to talk about things that make you anxious.
Yeah, nerve-wracking is a good one. It's like your nerves are literally being like stretched and pulled.
They are.
Have you ever felt that way?
Oh, badly. Public speaking always gets my nerves going.
Oh yeah.
What about you?
What kind of situations make me feel nerve-wracked?
Yeah.
Anything involving heights. Just thinking about standing on a high ledge makes me feel on edge.
I can relate to that.
Yeah.
And that's a good point you bring up on edge. It's like a heightened state of stress where you're easily irritated or angered.
Right, so you've got grouchy, stressed out, on edge.
Yeah.
It's amazing how many different ways there are to describe negative emotions in English.
It is.
It's like having a whole palette of colors to express yourself.
Exactly. And what I love about this podcast is that it helps you understand not just the meaning of these words, but also their appropriate usage in a real conversation.
Yeah,
That's key to sounding natural.
totally.
Yeah.
But it's not just about expressing negative emotions, right? They also talked about ways to cope with them.
Absolutely. And that's where things get really interesting.
Okay, tell me more. What kind of coping mechanisms did they discuss?
Well, they touched on phrases like losing your temper, brushing someone off, and then on the flip side, cheering someone up.
Oh yeah, I definitely know that, losing my temper feeling. It's so frustrating, but
Exactly. It's that moment when you just can't hold back the anger anymore.
yeah.
But did you notice how Marco and Catherine also talked about ways to avoid getting to that point?
I'm curious, what did they suggest?
Well, they talked about brushing someone off as a way to deal with anger.
Okay.
Like when you just need some space and don't want to engage.
Yeah, sometimes you just need to step away and cool down before you say something you'll regret.
Right.
But I'm sure brushing someone off can be misinterpreted, right?
Absolutely.
Like, how do you...
It's all about the context and how you do it.
Yeah.
Marco gave a pretty relatable example about how he brushed off his friend who wanted to go to the movies. But you could hear in his tone that it wasn't meant to be hurtful.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's fascinating how much tone of voice can influence the meaning of a phrase.
It's true. And that's one of the biggest benefits of learning English through podcasts.
Yeah.
You get to hear how these phrases are used in different situations and with different inflections.
Yeah.
It really helps you develop a more intuitive understanding of the language.
So true. Okay, I'm really intrigued by this episode.
Yeah.
What else did you cover?
Well, they went on to talk about ways to cheer someone up,
Okay.
which of course is the opposite of feeling down.
Right.
And this is where I think we can all learn a thing or two.
Yeah.
They shared some of their own personal remedies for dealing with negativity.
Ooh. Like, ooh. I'm always looking for new ways to boost my mood.
Well, Marco mentioned that he finds going shopping therapeutic.
Okay.
Not necessarily about buying things, but more about being out and about, browsing, maybe treating himself to something small.
Retail therapy. I
Yeah.
totally get that. What about Catherine? What's her go-to mood booster?
Catherine is more of an organizer.
Okay.
She said that when she's stressed, she likes to tidy up and organize things.
Interesting. It's like putting your physical space in order to calm your mind.
Right.
I like that.
Me too. And you know what's fascinating is that they even discuss this idiom, you are something else. It's a phrase that can be either positive or negative, depending on the tone of voice.
That's so true. It's
Yeah.
all about the delivery. You could say it with admiration or with utter disbelief.
Right.
And-
And that's what makes spoken English so dynamic and honestly a little bit challenging. You
Yeah.
have to pay attention to all those subtle cues to really understand the meaning.
Absolutely. Like a puzzle.
It is.
Figuring out all the nuances and hidden meanings.
It is, but that's also what makes it so rewarding, right? The
Yeah.
more you learn, the more you realize how much depth and complexity there is to the language.
I couldn't agree more.
Yeah.
So we've covered a lot of ground already, but it seems like there's even more to uncover in this episode.
Yeah.
What else can you tell me?
Well, there's this one part where Marco and Catherine discuss something quite insightful,
Okay.
the concept of remedies.
Remedies. What do you mean by that?
They were talking about specific things you can do to combat negative emotions.
Okay.
It's like having a toolkit for dealing with bad moods.
I love that.
Yeah.
So it's not just about identifying the feeling, but also having actionable strategies to shift your mindset.
Exactly. And that's what I find so empowering about learning English through podcasts like this. It's not just about vocabulary and grammar, it's
Right.
about gaining practical tools for navigating real life situations.
That's such a good point. It's like a crash course in emotional intelligence, all wrapped up in a casual conversation.
Right.
Right.
And it reminds me of something else they touched upon, the fact that different people express their emotions in different ways.
Yeah.
Some are more vocal, while others are more reserved.
Yeah, that's so true.
Uh-huh.
And I imagine that can lead to all sorts of misunderstandings, especially when you're interacting with people from different cultures.
Oh, absolutely. What might be considered rude or aggressive in one culture might be perfectly normal in another.
Yeah.
It's all about being aware of those cultural nuances and adapting your communication style accordingly.
It's like learning a whole new set of social cues along with the language itself.
Exactly. And that's why I think this podcast is so valuable. It's not just teaching you English, it's giving you a glimpse into the culture and how people communicate in real life situations.
I'm completely hooked.
Yeah.
What else did Marco and Catherine discuss?
Well, they talked about a lot of other interesting things like,
This is reminding me of that time I tried to explain how I was feeling to a friend, and I just couldn't find the right words. It was so frustrating.
I've been there too. Sometimes you just wish you had a bigger vocabulary to articulate those subtle shades of emotion.
Exactly. Like, how do you explain that feeling of being on edge without sounding like you're about to explode?
Right. It's a tricky one. But that's why listening to these podcast conversations is so helpful. You pick up on all those little expressions that native speakers use naturally.
It's like absorbing the language by osmosis.
Yeah,
You start to notice patterns and develop an ear for what sounds right.
absolutely. Remember those phrases we talked about earlier? Stressed out, nerve-wracking, on edge?
Yeah.
Marco and Catherine actually gave some great examples of how to use them in different situations.
Ooh, I'd love to hear some of those examples. It's one thing to know the meaning of a word, but it's another thing to actually use it in a conversation.
Totally. So, for instance, they talked about how being a doctor can be incredibly nerve-wracking. Think about it. You're dealing with people's health making life or death decisions. That's a lot of pressure.
No kidding.
Yeah.
It takes a special kind of person to handle that kind of stress day in and day out.
Right. And they also mentioned how skydiving was a nerve-wracking experience. Can you imagine that feeling of jumping out of a plane, free-falling through the air?
I get chills just thinking about it. It'd be exhilarating and terrifying at the same time.
Definitely. And then there was this example about a soccer match between Brazil and Italy. Imagine the tension in those final moments, the feeling that either team could win.
Oh man, I can practically feel the energy. It must have been so nerve-wracking for the players and the fans.
Exactly. See how those real-life examples make the phrases come alive?
Oh yeah.
You can almost feel the emotions they're describing.
Totally. It's like those words are no longer just abstract concepts. They're connected to real experiences and feelings.
Speaking of relatable experiences, let's talk about brushing someone off. I think we've all been on both sides of that one at some point.
Oh yeah, for sure. Sometimes you're the one doing the brushing and sometimes you're the one getting brushed off. It's not always fun, but it's definitely part of life.
It is. And Marco and Catherine actually shared a funny example of this. Do you remember when Marco's friend asked him to go see a movie and he just brushed him off with a silly excuse?
Uh-huh. Yeah, that was classic. It's amazing how creative we can get with our excuses when we're trying to avoid something.
It's true. Oh, I have to wash my hair tonight. My goldfish needs a pedicure. We've all been there.
But I think it's important to remember that sometimes people brush others off because they're dealing with their own stuff. It might not be personal.
That's a really good point. Maybe they're feeling stressed, angry, or just need some space to process their emotions.
Exactly. It's a good reminder to have compassion and try not to take things personally.
Absolutely. And speaking of compassion, let's talk about cheering someone up. Marco and Catherine actually shared some of their own go-to remedies for feeling better when they're down.
Ooh. I'm always up for learning new mood-boosting techniques. What did they suggest?
Well, Marco mentioned that he likes to go shopping to clear his head. It's not necessarily about buying things, but more about the experience of being out and about browsing and maybe treating himself to something small.
Retail therapy. I get that. Sometimes just getting out of the house and changing your environment can make a big difference.
Right, and Catherine is more of an organizer. She finds comfort in tidying up and putting things in order.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
It's almost like organizing your physical space helps to organize your mental space.
Exactly. It's about finding those little rituals that bring a sense of calm and control when things feel chaotic.
So we've got retail therapy for Marco and organized serenity for Catherine. I wonder what other cheering up strategies are out there.
That's a good question. I think it would be interesting to hear what our listeners do to boost their moods.
Totally. Maybe we could have a little cheering up challenge in the comments section. Everyone can share their favorite mood boosting activity.
That's a great idea. It would be
Yeah.
fun to see what everyone comes up with.
Okay, so we've talked about nerve-wracking situations, brushing people off, and cheering ourselves up. What else stuck out to you from this episode?
Well, there's one more thing I wanted to touch on. Remember that phrase, "you are something else"?
Yeah.
It's such a versatile expression, but it can be tricky to interpret.
Yeah, I remember them using it in a playful way, but I can definitely see how it could have a more negative connotation depending on the context.
Exactly. Like if someone says it with a sarcastic or angry tone, it could be a way of expressing disapproval or even disgust.
It's all about paying attention to the tone of voice in the situation. That's where the real learning happens, picking up on those subtle cues that give language its depth and richness.
And that's why listening to podcasts can be so valuable. You get to hear how native speakers use these phrases in different contexts, and you start to develop an intuitive understanding of how they work.
It's like you're training your ear to become a language detective.
I love that analogy.
You're constantly analyzing the clues and piecing together the puzzle of meaning.
And the best part is it doesn't feel like work. It's just like listening to an interesting conversation.
Exactly. It's a fun and engaging way to immerse yourself in the language and culture.
So tell me, what are some of your personal pet peeves? You know, those little things that make you lose your temper?
Let me think. I think one of my biggest pet peeves is people chewing with their mouths open. It drives me absolutely crazy.
Oh, I feel you on that one. It's like nails on a chalkboard.
Exactly. It's amazing how something so seemingly minor can trigger such a strong reaction. But that just goes to show how deeply connected we are to our senses and how they influence our emotions.
It's true. And it makes you wonder how you would describe those feelings in another language. Like, how would you say, it drives me crazy in a way that truly captures the intensity of the feeling?
That's a good point. I guess it's all about finding those equivalent expressions that convey the same emotional weight.
Right. And that's another reason why listening to podcasts can be so beneficial for language learners. You get to hear how native speakers express those everyday frustrations and annoyances.
It's like getting a crash course in the emotional landscape of a language.
Right.
You learn not just the words, but also the cultural context behind them.
Absolutely. And it's not just about negative emotions either. You can also learn how to express joy, excitement, surprise, and all those other wonderful feelings that make up the human experience.
It's like you're expanding your emotional vocabulary along with your linguistic vocabulary.
Exactly. And that's what makes language learning so fascinating. It's a journey of self-discovery as much as it is about communication.
I couldn't agree more. This whole conversation has really opened my eyes to the power of podcasts as a language learning tool.
Me too.
Yeah.
It's such a simple yet effective way to immerse yourself in the language and culture. And the best part is it's completely accessible to anyone with an internet connection.
And you can do it anywhere, anytime. While you're commuting, exercising, cooking dinner. It's like sneaking in a language lesson without even realizing it.
Exactly. And as we wrap up today's deep dive, I want to leave our listeners with a challenge.
Ooh, I love a good challenge. What is it?
I challenge you to find a podcast that truly interests you. It could be about anything and commit to listening to it regularly.
Great idea. It could be about news, sports, comedy, true crime, history, science, whatever you're passionate about.
Exactly. The key is to find something that you genuinely enjoy listening to. And as you listen, pay attention to the language they're using. Notice the phrases they repeat, the idioms they use, the way they structure their sentences.
And don't be afraid to look up words you don't understand. You'll be surprised how quickly your vocabulary expands just by listening and being curious.
Absolutely. And most importantly, have fun with it. Learning a language should be an enjoyable experience, not a chore.
Well said. So to all our listeners out there, we encourage you to embrace the world of podcasts and discover the incredible learning opportunities they offer.
Thanks for joining us on this deep dive into the world of language learning through podcast conversations. We hope you learned something new today.
And we'll be back soon with more fascinating topics to explore. Until then, keep those ears open and those minds engaged.
Happy listening.